Welcome to our channel. Before we dive into this incredible Viking tale, please hit the like button, subscribe for more amazing stories, and comment below telling us where you're watching from around the world. Your support means everything to us. The coastal winds of Nordland carried salt and the promise of adventure as Torvin adjusted his leather pack and stepped off the trading vessel. The harbor of Havenport bustled with merchants hawking their wares, fishermen mending nets, and children chasing seagulls through the wooden walkways that stretched over the dark waters. Torvin had traveled far from his home village of Stormhaven, drawn by tales of a mysterious merchant who possessed artifacts beyond imagination. Torvin was not like the other warriors of his clan. While his brothers sought glory in raids and conquest, he found himself drawn to the mysteries of the world, ancient runes carved in forgotten stones, stories whispered by traveling skilds, and the magic that seemed to dance just beyond the edge of understanding. His father, Chief Gunwald, often shook his head at his youngest son's curiosity, but Torvin's mother, Helga, had always encouraged him to follow his heart. "The wise warrior knows when to fight and when to listen," she would say, her weathered hands working wool as she spoke. "You have the gift of seeing beyond what others see, my son. Do not waste it." The merchant's stall stood at the far end of the harbor market, tucked between a blacksmith's forge and a rope-maker's shop. Unlike the other vendors who called out loudly to attract customers, this merchant sat quietly behind a collection of unusual items, carved bone trinkets, polished stones that seemed to catch light in impossible ways, and small wooden boxes with intricate locks. The merchant himself was ancient, his long white beard braided with silver threads, and his eyes the color of storm clouds. "You are not here for ordinary goods," the old merchant said as Torvin approached, his voice barely audible above the harbor sounds. It was not a question. Torvin studied the weathered face before him. "I seek knowledge. Stories speak of wonders that challenge what we know of the world." The merchant's eyes crinkled with what might have been amusement. "Knowledge comes with a price, young seeker. Are you prepared to pay it? What kind of price?" Instead of answering directly, the merchant reached beneath his wooden counter and withdrew a small iron key, its surface blackened with age. In the warehouse behind the blacksmith's forge there stands a cage of black iron. Within it lies something that has been imprisoned for longer than memory serves. The key opens the lock, but the choice of what to do next belongs to whoever holds it. Torvin took the key, feeling its unexpected warmth against his palm. "What is imprisoned there?" "That," the merchant said, already turning his attention to other customers, "is what you must discover for yourself." The warehouse was easy to find, though its entrance was hidden behind stacks of iron ingots and discarded anvils. Torvin waited until the blacksmith had closed his forge for the evening before making his way through the shadows. The key turned easily in the rusted lock, and the heavy wooden doors swung open with a creak that seemed to echo through eternity. Inside, the warehouse was larger than it appeared from outside, its ceiling disappearing into darkness above. Crates and barrels lined the walls, but at the center of the space stood something that made Torvin's breath catch in his throat. A cage of black iron, its bars twisted into intricate patterns, held a creature that belonged in the realm of legends. The dragon was magnificent, even in captivity. Its scales shifted between deep emerald and burnished gold, catching the faint light that filtered through the warehouse windows. Its wings were folded tight against its body, but Torvin could see they would span the width of his father's great hall when extended. Most striking were its eyes, ancient, intelligent, and filled with a sadness that seemed to echo through the ages. "Will I ever see the sky again?" The dragon spoke, its voice like wind through mountain caves. Torvin stepped closer, his heart racing. Dragons were creatures of myth and legend, spoken of in the old stories, but never seen in the world of men. Yet here was living proof that the ancient tales held truth. How long have you been imprisoned here? Torvin asked, his voice barely a whisper. The dragon's great head turned toward him, those ancient eyes studying his face. Time has no meaning in this cage of black iron. Seasons have passed like heartbeats, years like breaths. I have watched the light change through that small window, marking the passage of days I cannot count. Torvin noticed the chain then, thick links of the same black iron that formed the cage, wrapped around the dragon's neck and anchored to the floor with a massive lock. The metal seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and something about its appearance made him uneasy. Who imprisoned you here? A sorcerer who feared what I represented, the dragon replied. He believed that beings like me posed a threat to the order he wished to create. So he forged these chains from iron touched by starfall, metal that binds not just the body, but the spirit itself. Torvin examined the lock that held the chain. It was different from the one that had secured the warehouse door, more complex, covered in runes he did not recognize. But as he looked closer, he realized the merchant's key was changing, its shape shifting to match the new lock's requirements. The key adapts, he murmured in wonder. Magic recognizes magic, the dragon said. But know this, young one, if you free me, there will be consequences. The sorcerer who bound me is long dead, but his warnings remain. He believed my freedom would bring chaos to the world of men. Torvin considered these words carefully. All his life, he had been taught to think before acting, to weigh consequences against intentions. But as he looked into the dragon's ancient eyes, he saw something that reminded him of his own longing for freedom, the desire to soar beyond the boundaries that others had set. What do you believe? Torvin asked. Would your freedom bring chaos? The dragon was quiet for a long moment, its great chest rising and falling with breaths that seemed to echo through the warehouse. I believe that cages diminish all who are trapped within them, and all who build them. Freedom carries risk, but slavery carries certainty, the certainty of slow death. Torvin nodded slowly. His father had taught him that courage was not the absence of fear, but action taken despite fear. He inserted the key into the lock, feeling it click into place with a sound like thunder. Then fly free, he said, and turned the key. The lock fell away with a sound like breaking bells, and the chain unwound itself from the dragon's neck as if it had never been secured at all. The dragon stretched its great neck, wings beginning to unfurl, and for a moment Torvin thought he saw starlight dancing along its scales. But instead of taking flight immediately, the dragon lowered its great head until it was level with Torvin's own. You have shown wisdom beyond your years, young warrior. In a world where men seek to chain what they do not understand, you chose to grant freedom. This choice will echo through your life in ways you cannot yet imagine. I only did what felt right, Torvin replied, though his heart was racing with the magnitude of what had just occurred. The dragon's eyes seemed to twinkle with hidden knowledge. Rightness is not always rewarded in the world of men, but sometimes, when the choice is made from true courage rather than expectation of reward, the greatest gifts follow. With those words, the dragon spread its wings fully, filling the warehouse with their span. Golden light began to dance along its scales, growing brighter with each passing moment. The creature looked once more at Torvin, then launched itself toward the warehouse's high windows. But as the dragon reached the peak of its flight, something extraordinary happened. The creature began to dissolve into thousands of golden sparks, each one dancing and swirling through the air like fireflies on a summer evening. The sparks circled around Torvin once, twice, 3 times, before streaming out through the windows and disappearing into the night sky. Torvin stood alone in the empty warehouse, staring at the open cage and the fallen chain. Had it been real? The lingering warmth in the air and the faint scent of mountain winds suggested it had been no dream, Yet the dragon's disappearance into golden sparks seemed beyond the realm of possibility. He made his way back to the inn where he had taken lodging, his mind churning with questions. The innkeeper, a rotund man named Olaf, greeted him with characteristic cheerfulness. "You look as though you've seen the spirits of Valhalla themselves," Olaf chuckled, setting down a mug of ale before Torvin. "What adventures have you found in our quiet harbor town?" Torvin considered telling the innkeeper about his experience, but decided against it. Who would believe such a tale? Instead, he simply shook his head and retired to his room, where sleep eluded him until nearly dawn. The next morning brought news that changed everything. A messenger had arrived from Stormhaven with urgent word. Raiders from the eastern clans had been spotted approaching their territory. Chief Gunwald was calling all warriors home to defend their lands and families. Torvin gathered his belongings quickly, his thoughts turning to his mother Helga and his younger sister Freya. The journey home would take 3 days by land, and he could only hope he would arrive before any conflict began. As he prepared to leave, the old merchant appeared at his side as if from nowhere. "Your true test begins now," the merchant said quietly. "The dragon you freed was no ordinary creature." "What do you mean?" Torvin asked, though part of him already suspected the answer would be extraordinary. The merchant's storm-cloud eyes held depths of ancient knowledge. There are powers in this world that test the hearts of men in ways they do not expect. What appeared to be a dragon in need was something far greater, a test of your character when no reward was promised, no glory was offered, only the choice between freedom and captivity. A test by whom? By those who watch over warriors and determine who among them deserves protection in the trials ahead, the merchant replied cryptically. You chose compassion over caution, freedom over safety. Such choices do not go unnoticed by the powers that shape the fates of men. Before Torvin could ask more questions, the merchant had vanished into the morning crowd, leaving only his words echoing in Torvin's mind. The young Viking shouldered his pack and began the long journey home, wondering what awaited him in Stormhaven. The path through the northern forests was treacherous, winding between ancient pines and crossing streams swollen with spring melt. Torvin made good time the first day, reaching the halfway point by evening. He made camp in a clearing beside a clear brook, building a small fire and settling in for the night. It was during the second day's travel that he first noticed something had changed. A group of bandits emerged from the forest ahead, blocking the path with drawn weapons. There were 5 of them, experienced fighters by their appearance, and they clearly intended to rob or worse any traveler unfortunate enough to cross their path. "Your gold and goods," their leader demanded, a scarred man with cold eyes. "Hand them over and you might live to see another sunset." Torvin's hand moved instinctively to his sword, but something extraordinary happened as he prepared to defend himself. Time seemed to slow, and he could see the bandits' intentions as clearly as if they had spoken them aloud. The leader would strike first, aiming for Torvin's left shoulder. The second would try to circle behind him. The others would wait to see the outcome before committing to the attack. With this impossible knowledge, Torvin moved like water flowing around stones. He sidestepped the leader's strike before it was even launched, his own blade finding the man's wrist and disarming him with surgical precision. The second bandit found himself facing Torvin's blade at his throat before he had completed his flanking maneuver. The remaining 3, seeing their companions so easily defeated, dropped their weapons and fled into the forest. Torvin stood in the path, his sword still drawn, marveling at what had just occurred. He had always been a competent warrior, trained by his father and the other clan fighters, but what had just happened was beyond his normal abilities. It was as if he had known exactly what his opponents would do before they did it themselves. The leader of the bandits, clutching his disarmed wrist, looked up at Torvin with a mixture of fear and awe. "What manner of warrior are you? I have fought for 20 years, and never have I seen such skill." "I am Torvin of Stormhaven," he replied, lowering his sword but remaining alert. "And I suggest you find a more honorable way to make your living." The bandit nodded quickly and scrambled away into the forest, leaving Torvin alone on the path. As he sheathed his sword, he thought he caught a glimpse of golden sparks dancing in the air around him, but when he looked directly at them, they were gone. The remainder of his journey passed without incident, though Torvin found himself testing his newfound abilities in small ways. When crossing a particularly dangerous stream, he seemed to know exactly where to step to avoid the slippery stones. When night fell and he needed to hunt for food, his arrow found its mark with impossible accuracy. Each success was accompanied by that same glimpse of golden light at the edge of his vision. By the time he reached Stormhaven on the third day, Torvin had begun to understand the magnitude of what had been given to him. The dragon's, or rather the mysterious power's, gift was not simply enhanced fighting ability, but something far more profound. It was as if the threads of fate themselves were guiding him toward the choices that would ensure his survival and success. He arrived to find the village in full preparation for siege. Warriors sharpened weapons, while women and children prepared supplies and reinforced the defensive walls. His father, Chief Gunwald, stood at the center of it all, directing preparations with the calm authority that had made him respected among all the northern clans. "Torvin!" his mother Helga called out as she spotted him approaching. She ran to embrace him, her relief evident in every line of her face. "The messengers said you might not make it back in time." "I would not miss defending our home," Torvin replied, holding her tightly. "Where do you need me, father?" Chief Gunwald approached, his weathered face showing both relief and concern. "The eastern clans have united under a war chief called Ragvald the Fierce. They outnumber us 3-1 and will arrive by tomorrow's dawn. We have prepared as best we can, but—" he shook his head grimly. "But we will stand together," Torvin said firmly. "Our ancestors faced worse odds and prevailed through courage and unity." His father nodded, but Torvin could see the weight of responsibility in the older man's eyes. As chief, Gunwald knew that every decision could mean the difference between life and death for everyone in Stormhaven. That evening, as the village settled into an uneasy quiet before the coming storm, Torvin found himself standing on the walls looking out at the forest. His sister Freya joined him, her young face serious beyond her years. "Are you afraid?" she asked quietly. Torvin considered the question carefully. By all logic, he should be terrified. Tomorrow would bring a battle against overwhelming odds, and many good people might not survive to see another sunset. Yet he felt a strange calm, as if some deeper knowledge assured him that things would unfold as they were meant to. "I am concerned," he said finally, "but not afraid." Sometimes courage is not about feeling no fear, but about trusting that we can face whatever comes with honor and determination. Freya nodded thoughtfully. "Mother says you have always been different from the other warriors. She says you see things others miss." "Perhaps," Torvin replied, thinking of the golden sparks and the impossible knowledge that had guided him through the bandit encounter. "But tomorrow, we all fight together as one clan, one family. That unity is stronger than any individual gift." As dawn approached, bringing with it the sound of war horns from the eastern clans, Torvin felt the strange calm deepen. Whatever power had tested him in the form of the imprisoned dragon, whatever gift had been granted in return for his compassion, he sensed it would guide him through the trials ahead. The true test was just beginning, but for the first time in his life, he felt truly ready for whatever fate might bring. The golden sparks danced once more at the edge of his vision, and Torvin smiled. Tomorrow would bring battle, but it would also bring the chance to protect everything he held dear. The dragon's gift, the gift of the All-Father himself, he now suspected, would ensure he lived to see his family safe once more. Years later, when Torvin had become chief of his own clan and his deeds in the great battle of Stormhaven had become legend, he would often sit by the fire and tell the story of the imprisoned dragon to his children. They would listen with wide eyes as he described the creature's magnificent scales and sorrowful plea for freedom. But Torvin knew the deeper truth, that the dragon had been no dragon at all, but Odin, the All-Father in disguise, testing the heart of a young warrior to see if he deserved the gift of protection in battle. The golden sparks that had danced around him were the sign of divine favor, ensuring that he would always return home to his family, no matter how fierce the fighting or how great the odds against him. In the great battle that followed his return to Stormhaven, Torvin had fought with such skill and courage that the eastern clans themselves spoke his name with respect. Victory came not through magic, but through the unity of his people, and the knowledge that sometimes the greatest strength comes from choosing compassion over conquest, freedom over control. The old merchant who Torvin came to believe had been another guise of the Wanderer himself had spoken truly. The choice to free what was caged had echoed through his entire life, bringing not just protection in battle, but wisdom in leadership, and the deep satisfaction of knowing he had acted with honor when honor was not required. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the northern lights danced across the sky, Torvin would see golden sparks dancing among them and remember the dragon's words. Rightness is not always rewarded in the world of men. But sometimes, when the choice is made from true courage rather than expectation of reward, the greatest gifts follow. The greatest gift he had learned was not invincibility in battle, but the knowledge that he had proven worthy of the trust placed in him by his family, his clan, and the powers that watched over those who chose courage over comfort, compassion over conquest. The story of the caged dragon became a favorite tale among his people, passed down through generations as a reminder that the gods still walk among mortals, testing hearts and rewarding those who choose wisdom and mercy when the easy path leads toward selfishness and fear. In this way, Torvin's moment of compassion in a dark warehouse became a light that would guide his descendants for generations to come. Thank you for watching. Did this epic Viking tale inspire you? Let us know in the